So we're continuing in the book on Lech Lecha. It's the section on Lech Lecha, page 63, Breshit Yud Daled, Pasuk Tet Baf. So Genesis 14, sentence 15, Vayechalek, and he divided with a pashta, with a note that emphasizes the word but draws us forward from there. Avram prepared a simultaneous multi-center assault on the enemy to mislead him with regard to the location and with the strength of the offensive, and he divided his armies into groups around the camp of the allied troops of Hammurabi. By this maneuver, Abraham created a sudden panic and confusion among his adversaries, who thought of a reunited attack by the rebels, which had started from various directions, as indicated by the directional shape of the reading mark. So it seems that it's going. The attack is going in one direction, and his enemy is confused. And here, I'm sort of surprised that he didn't bring in the Zohar here. So the Zohar says there's a general principle, ein somchim al nes. You don't rely on a miracle. So Abraham and a small band of men is about to fight the superpower of the time. He's about to fight an army of multiple kings at the same time. So how does Abraham think that he's going to go with his small band of men and manage to win this battle? So the question the Zohar asks is that, don't rely on a miracle. So that obviously was not what was going to happen. What was Abraham going to do? Abraham took with him a large amount of money, and he was going to try to buy Lot out of captivity. And if he failed at that and was taken captive himself, he sort of was going to at least be there with him. So that's what the Zohar said the original strategy was. What happens? He gets to the encampment, and an angel lights up all the weaknesses in the enemy's encampment, and Abraham says, God is giving me the path, and he manages to battle because he has literally this map of everywhere that he's supposed to attack that's been sort of drawn out for him. And he realizes that this is a divine plan, and that's if that's the help that he's being given, that he is going to win. So he in fact initiates the attack only when he gets there. We have a side note here. NB, this tactic was reapplied in the Battle of, I guess it's on the next one, in the Battle of Marathon. So again, the idea is to allow your enemy to think that something that had happened before is happening again is the strategy that's being applied here. So even though he's attacking with a small number of people, they are expecting the same force that attacked them in the first time to be coming again, and they've already just battled against the other set of kings, and they're not prepared for the same force to attack them again. So they panic, and in their panic they become more vulnerable. Alehem, with a dargah. So this is a note that is under the word, sort of tells us about something that's going downwards. Over them, number 2. Through a, quote, surprise attack, Avram employed psychological warfare against the strong armies of Kedar Laomer, winning the supremacy over them, as shown by the shape of the reading mark. So again, you see the concept of literally him coming down upon them, and them all of a sudden becoming meek and subservient. So that's sort of the dargah, the going down against them. Lila, a night.
Oh, did you want to do the...
I'm sorry, we have another note. This maneuver was repeated later by Epimenides, who utilized it at Leuctra in 370 BC. And I did not, unfortunately, look up what happened at that battle, but I will certainly trust your father's historical knowledge that again is the tactic to to create panic by making yourself seeming more than you really are and seeming like something that has happened before. Laila, a night with the sheltering Tavir. The darkness at a night was essential for psychological reasons, and Avram utilized it for several purposes, as stressed by the shape of the reading mark. These were to attack the soldiers unexpectedly when they were asleep and relaxed. So that's the sheltered point, is that the people thought that they were safe. To interfere with the reorganization of any military units, so they thought that their structure was safe, and it wasn't. To obstruct identification of the battling manpower, and again, organization of an army is what normally keeps an army functioning together as a unit and safe. To remove the orientation of the positions and the amount of the battling force. So again, you choose positions that you want to be in because those are the best defensive or offensive positions. So by again coming in this surprise way, you defeat that normal part of strategy. And to give the impression of a widespread force, as the Gemara in Sanhedrin says, Amar Rav Yochanan, Oto Malach shenizdeman lo l'Avraham Laila Shemo. So Rav Yochanan says in Sanhedrin that the angel who was sort of called to Abraham's side, his name that angel was called Lila. That angel was called Night. So he gets sort of divine or angelic help. Or as the Zohar says, the darkness of the night alone killed the enemy due to confusion. And again, the question is that sort of an allegorical way of saying the same thing that was in the Gemara, or is that in fact a different interpretation completely? And I think it's very interesting that he put them both in the same comment rather than separating them out, because I think he understood it as an allegorical way of saying what the Gemara says. So you're right poetically about the general who signs the order and sends it out to the front, that a drop of ink defeated the enemy. That I think it's the same idea here. I think that's why he put the two of them together. So I think that's very poetic that he did it that way. Number 4, English translation of he with a mercha, lightly connected to what's come from before, but mostly sweeping us forward together with the narrative. Number 4, Avram himself supervised operations on the battlefield, and he gave appropriate orders and directives to coordinate the activities of all of his units, as denoted by the directional shape of the reading mark. So the battle plan is completely connected to Avram, who was the one who was leading the strategy forwards from there, and that's why it gets a mercha, lightly connected to what's come from before, but sweeping it forward into the future. Va'avadav, and his servants, with a tipcha. This is sort of closing off the phrase with a pause, with a slight pause afterwards. His commands were strictly observed, and his servants maintained contact with one another as well as with Avram, as suggested by the closing shape of the directional reading mark. So here you have an obedient and well-disciplined army listening to the commanding general. So that's why the Avadav are tied to who? To Avram. Vayakem, and he smashed them. The hakot is generally interpreted as either to physically hit or to beat, to best somebody in a contest. So I'm not quite sure why the departure in the English translation. We'll read through number 6. So this is with the stabilizing et nachta, with possibly something upwards to it as well. He combined all his forces, including the darkness of the night, against the enemies, and he smashed them decisively, as expressed by the stabilizing shape of the reading mark. So because he's got angelic help, so you see the et nachta has that stable base with something rising up from it. So he used not only ground forces, if you will, but also angelic help. By your defame, and he chased them with a pashta. Again, an upwards facing note, which brings the narrative forward from this point. By means of the activities and character of each component of his campaign, Avram instigated panic among his enemies, and he chased them, causing complete disorder and disintegration of Hammurabi's troops, which were dispersed and retreated to their homeland, as specified by the directional shape of the reading mark. So literally, he chased them away, and that's the direction that they went. We have a second comment on this. MB, Avram pursued his lightning victory, Blitz Sieg, by constant pressure on the retreating disorganized enemies, preventing recovery and reorganization after they have been broken down to a small powerless group. This tactic of Avram was applied later by Alexander of Macedonia, Mukdon the Great in the 4th century, who also took advantage of a victory by continuing the chase. The secret stronghold of Hammurabi Nimrod was the possession of the remains of Adam's clothes, but it was overcome by the direct order from God to Avram Lech Lecha. So, in many biblical stories, we see the Midrash coming in and telling us how somebody who seemingly should not have had power manages to hold on power by their relationship to a knowledge of something that is holy or possession of something that is holy. And the artifact that Nimrod is supposed to have maintained that gives him force and power is the clothes that God made for Adam Harishon. So again, that little bit of divinity is what he has. Similarly, we say with Bilam that Bilam knew that moment when God was angry. So again, he had connection to something that was divine. So we see the Midrash coming and filling in many of these things with people who are villains, how they manage to access such great ability to do harm or to be harmful at any particular time.
So how does the first part of that paragraph relate to that last sentence? Like how he pursued his lightning victory, and it was a tactic that was used by Alexander, and then the secret stronghold of Hammurabi was possession of the remains of Adam's clothes. What does that have to do with the lightning victory of Abraham?
So the question is, how could Avram have defeated somebody who had in fact some a divine artifact, if you will, guiding him? And the answer is, Avram had the power of the direct order from God. Lech Lecha, you go and you're going to inherit this land. So God realizes that this land has been taken from the sons of Shem, and he's going to give it back to them. So because Avram is working with the direct word of God, anything that's a secondary power becomes lesser than that. So Lech Lecha overpowers
Holding
of Adam Harishon's clothes.
Scissors, paper, rock.
I suppose. No, it's there's a hierarchy. It's not that one can defeat the other. We're top of the food chain, if you will. Top of the pyramid, whatever. Ad chova, till chova, with the katon, the two-part note, one thing higher, one thing lower, slight pause afterwards. Avram proceeded till chova, partially obstructing the roads in order to save the prisoners and their belongings, as pointed out by the bipartite shape of the reading mark. So here Avram decides whether the goal of the battle is to defeat the enemy, or the goal of the battle is to free the hostages. And here, despite the fact that he might have been able to continue and defeat even more, he chooses to come back to the goal that he had set for himself at the beginning, which is to save the hostages. So that's why we get the two-part idea of that note. Asher, that, with a mercha, so lightly connected to what's come from before, but mostly bringing the narrative forward from here. Number 9, the idea was that while the defeated troops would try to run for their own safety, they left the prisoners and goods as illustrated by the directional shape of the reading mark. So he goes to Chovah and stops attacking there. Why? Because the enemy is in full retreat, they're running away, and they're leaving behind anything that they thought would originally have been a value, but they just need to run. Mismol, from left, with the tipcha, the closing note that focuses backwards and pauses slightly afterwards, closes the phrase. Chovah was situated from left on the east side of the tract, leading to Mesopotamia, from left when going to the north, as conveyed by the closing shape of the directional reading mark.
Going from the north to the
Okay, it says to the north.
Yeah, no, it says if you come from the north, heading south, your left side is going to be east.
Yeah.
Right.
Oops. I mean, if I read it right.
Yeah, that's what I was.
So I think we're gonna cross that out and write the word from instead of the word to. The Damasek, for Damasek, number 11, with the stabilizing sof pasuk. When leaving for Damasek, they would be on the proper route to reach their homeland.
The message would be north. If they're going to the north or left, at that point it would be west, not east. If you're north of Damascus, heading south, your left would be towards Iran, Iraq, Mesopotamia, that whole cradle. But did the battle actually take place there? It would be south in Canaan, right in the area of the Jordan Valley.
They had won. They can take it. They had taken hostages. You don't know where they had gone or where they were going to next. So that's not mentioned in the narrative. So it doesn't say exactly where this battle took place. So anywhere is fair game.
Fair enough.
And we have remarks. A. Not only is it evident from this sentence that Avram was de facto the king by making international treaties with Mareh Yaakov Shiur and by conducting an independent war, but he was also a military leader and a strategist. Although many military operational procedures and tactics were known before him, e.g. fortifications, trenches, obstructions, masking, surprise attack, terror, etc., Avram was the first to introduce psychological warfare along with a multi-centric attack to defeat a prevailing enemy. So when you see, if you sort of watch any sort of war movies, really from sort of Anglo-Saxon time up until the 1800s, armies stayed in formation. Armies stayed in a particular pattern, and that gave the particular weapon that they were using its best advantage. So to try to confuse the enemy by using a tactic that defeats that particular advantage is again, anything that does that is an innovation. I sort of remember one story from the War of 1812, the capture of Detroit by the British. What did they do? they only had something like, they had a very small number of troops. I think it was like 300 or 400 troops. And Detroit was a very heavily fortified city. So what did they do? They got two places that had sort of forest here and forest there, and they marched the troops sort of very slowly through that little gap in between the two forests, and then they had them go under a ridge so that they wouldn't be seen, run back, and then come again. So they seemed to be this huge force that just kept on marching and marching and marching, and Detroit actually surrendered without fighting.
Wow.
So again, to use a psychological tactic that would make your enemy, who is always in something of a fog of war, doesn't know exactly what's happening on the other side, to make them think that something more was happening, is within the realm of history, is something that happens again and again and again, and a clever commander can use that uncertainty on the other person's part to in fact win a battle. So that's just, that I think brings it into our minds so that we can get the idea of a tactic that psychologically makes the enemy think, oh my God, I don't know what I can do here. I'm just going to give up or run away or whatever.
In 1948, that was an oft-used tactic. In fact,
Oh, yeah,
in the
for
movie,
sure.
they captured that in the movie with the longest, not long, maybe it was Exodus, it was the other one of the other. But again, they just send all the troop carriers, but they're empty. They're just the driver and the guy in the back. All the back of the trucks are empty. But they see 30 trucks pull up, they think there's 600 soldiers coming, and the Arabs run away.
Remark number B. Vayechalek alehem laila, and he divided over them a night. Not only was this part of his surprise attack, but it was also part of Lech Lecha, as explained in the beginning of the Sidra, corresponding with creation as well. Vahi'era vahivoke. The division at midnight separates the period of judgment, Gvura, from the period of mercy, Chesed. So again, we're talking about divine emanations and the concept that Vahi'era vahivoke, there's this demarcation in between night and day, and Avram is given this sort of double command. Lech Lecha seems to be the same word twice, so we have this mirroring of Vayhi and Vayhi, Vayhi Erev, Vayhi Voker. So we've got the idea of there being a demarcation between the way things were and the way they're going to be. The division at midnight separates the period of judgment. So Gvura, where Avram has to bring forth inner strength, to the period of mercy, Chesed, where Avram in fact wins the battle, in the sense that the time of great darkness is also the time of the birth of light. So again, darkest before the dawn. If you literally you don't appreciate the concept of light if you didn't have darkness first. So the one grows out of the other. Through his personal example, Avram gave a message to later generations, even to individuals. This proved itself in Jacob's fight with the angel of the Exodus, by Hiba Chatzi Alayla, as our rabbis explained, the Yom Shenecharav Beit Hamikdash Nolad Hagoel. So again, when Jacob fights the angel of Esau, he does this in the battle. The battle is just before dawn, and then the sun rises up, and he's defeated him. And similarly, the Exodus from Egypt is B'Chatzi Halayla, in the middle of the night. That's when the angel of death comes, kills the Egyptians' firstborn, and then really from that moment on, Pharaoh says, "Get out of here," but the Jews stay and just leave so that they go on their own terms, not on Pharaoh's terms. So that's why they go in the middle of the day, rather than by Hiba Chatzi Alayla. So they were really free from that point, but they didn't go. And similarly, we have the rabbinic saying that the same day that Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, that's the day that the person who's going to redeem the Jewish people was born. And the German proverb. Anyone want to venture a guess. When das Unglück stieg am hochsten, ist das Glück am nächsten. How was that? When the disaster is at its highest, relief is that it is the closest. And reads Vayhichosha, and reads Genesis 1, 2, 3. Vayhichosha, Vayhior. Let's pause for a second.